Leave
Welcome
meeting.
back. Welcome back, fans of all fans. This is the Caddyshack podcast, episode 14. We made it. Feels like we just did our first one. So, as you guys all remember, we'll kind of kick off the show with a little bit of news. We have a awesome guest that I'm super pumped to have, and I saw face to face a few weeks ago, and then we got the whole crew together. So you got Bartless and Brett and I, and let's kind of get started. So of course I was going to turn the ball over to Bartless,
Yeah.
Kick us off. Tell us a little
News about
news,
Survivor
what's new and
13.
updated. A lot of stuff since the last one. I mean, we could again, bunch of stuff has happened. So let's do it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes that have happened since the last one. Today we'll be talking about just two of them with awesome partners in Caddyshack. I'm going to share my screen for this one so you guys understand what we're doing to make it a little easier. If you're watching this podcast and you haven't gotten to go to Awesome Partners or awesome.partners or awesomepartners.com, whichever one you feel more comfortable with, here's our website. And if you go to our services portion, you'll see the APJA, the Awesome Partners Journey Assessment, which is a 2-week program where we provide you with a gap analysis of where you are with your current journey with AWS and understanding from AWS as to where they feel you could better yourself and how you could tweak your product to make yourself more of an AWS-centric type product. And then the final piece of it is a 12-month journey, predictions and advice on what you should do to get to where you want to be in 12 months. So that's something that we have. If you just go to the website, you'll find it. The other thing, because I said we're only going to do two, is if you go to our events, please sign up for Cloud Wars, which will be in New York City on July 10th. At Moxie Times Square. Again, it is Cloud Wars Return of the Gen AI. So, parody.
That's great.
It's a parody, so everyone knows. But Return of the Gen AI, come on. We're going to basically turn the entire upstairs. I talked to a movie prop company. We're going to turn the entire upstairs into the inside of the Death Star. So just so you know, a lot of awesome things going on. So that's where we're at right now with awesome partners. Caddyshack is coming along, 500 plus members, 16 countries. We're doing a lot of great things. Feel free to join at caddyshack.com, which is right here.
Wait, do I get to dress up like Princess Leia again?
Again, yes.
Absolutely.
We made it that much easier to join Caddyshack. So you just hit this join button and you will be a member. And our members portal is getting to be quite robust with training, profile surveys, members forums. So this is what the members get access to all these things. So feel free to join. We'd love to have you. That's all I got. Back to you, Michael.
Good.
Hey, can I ask a question about that event? Is that going to be in conjunction with an AWS summit or?
There may or may not be a New York City summit going on at the same time, but that has nothing to do with us. We're just a Cloud Alliance director company that happens to be throwing a Cloud Wars event in New York City.
I see. Good call. Good talk. And if it just happens to coincide, it's total coincidence. Love it.
Total coincidence.
So Brett, I'll spin it to you. Just any news, anything top of mind since the last time you were on the podcast with us? It's been a little while.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of a new acronym for AWS, right? It's been such a chaotic start to the year. Do we want to talk about that? Like, it has been, wow, smells like Chris Cruz all over the place, and like the verticals are coming. People have been adopting it without even being told. Like, it was supposed to start, right? Enterprise engaged. Nobody else was supposed to change. And then Greenfield was like, we're just going to do it anyway. So then they started doing their own verticals, right? And falling in line to the enterprise side. And then here comes commercial. Now they're doing the same thing too. So it's really interesting the way it's moved around. But I've talked to PSMs that are now AEs. I've talked to AEs that are now PSMs. I've talked to L8s that don't even have their idea of what they're doing this year. It has been absolute chaos. Absolute freaking chaos. You guys open to discussing that, kind of the chaos in the start of this year?
Yeah, let's talk about chaos.
Let's talk about some chaos.
Let's first introduce everybody, and then we'll get into the chaos conversation.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
That's absolutely.
I
Let's
mean,
start
my
with Dan.
perspective, it's long overdue. I think if you take AWS's last fiscal quarter, multiply it by 4, you're talking about I just crossed $100 billion in ARR. And
Let's
what,
get big.
10-15% of all IT spend is in a public cloud. So it's the
Yeah,
largest piece of the pie in a 15% sized pie, which
and you know
means
the thing that's
yeah,
what's
it's just
significant about
unbelievable.
that, and what's significant about that is just, and we see the slide often, and the platform and everything. That means there's 85% still out there. That's what's just absolutely bananas to me. That there's still 80. There's still they say it in a real long runway, but they're not wrong. I mean, it is a long runway out there for partners. There's a lot still out there to capture.
Yeah. So I would just say it's exciting, verticalizing the sales teams and go to market. I don't know, they're probably the last company and certainly the biggest that's decided to do it, right? It makes a lot of sense. I think it makes it an opportunity for a lot of partners and also really hard for other partners, right? So I would say, I think we talk a lot about this. The first few episodes here, what did we talk about? Superpower, drag, the 5 C's, all of this stuff. In many ways, you can't be everyone to you can't be everything to everyone. So even if you were listening, it was kind of like, figure out what you do, who you sell to, what your superpowers are, and then go be that best partner to that thing, right, at AWS. And the beauty now is at least that thing, whether it's financial or gaming or media and entertainment, that thing is now a vertical, which I mean helps you with focus, content, building champions, meeting executives. In many ways, for a startup or a smaller partner, I think this is a huge advantage. The flip side is if you're already everywhere doing everything and you're a large partner, it gets really hard because now where you might have been able to catch a team that segments across a bunch of things, now you've got like 10 or 12 verticals to go try to chase and figure out everything that you're trying to do with them. So that's just my perception and what I've seen. Like all change, it's going to be messy. And I know, like for the first couple months, like I felt like people were sitting on their hands, not even sure what to do. But I see a lot of that evolution and change happening now. I think the dust is starting to settle, and I think it's a good change, but change is hard for any company, especially when AWS has how many tens of thousands of employees. It's just insane.
Oh yeah, I agree with those sentiments too. I think there's equally a considerable challenge, right? I think they made it really, really hard for partners at the beginning of this year because of that. It is what it is, right? And unfortunately, their change equals change to us partners, where we had a great cadence set up before with the enterprise engaged team and in Greenfield, right? It's all different now. They don't even know where they're at. Like my enterprise engaged friend that was on, say, like on the East Coast is now ISV, security ISVs as a vertical, as a PSM overlay now. And it's just so freaking different. At the same time, I do think those more mature partners have an opportunity to really, get focused back on what they do best, back to divisional placement, like working through that exercise. Now it's already even built into like the ACE portal. You don't have to go through the exercise with your PDM. It's just there. And so understanding where they need to focus on and realizing that crap, maybe we do have, 60% of our book of business is healthcare and the other is fintech. Great. Go get your freaking certifications. There's nothing but beautiful good and glory in the co-market from that. You get money, you get your badge of honor, right? So, but this first gap is definitely tough. And I know it's been really, really hard on a lot of the Alliance folks that are out there in our same positions because it almost feels like we're not effective because of the chaos of AWS and we're still going through and working through the motions that we know are really successful. What do you think, Dan?
I think that's a fantastic point, and I think another side of this versus just the established partners, this is actually a good thing for the non-established partners because what we found in the past that there were so many that were locked in, and they did have those deep relationships in these certain verticals and certain areas, and it was very hard, especially on the engaged side, for another partner of any size really to break into that, because they were just comfortable. And so now that everything has been shaken up I think it's just going to give a lot more opportunity for some of these other partners to possibly step in and also make their mark, and I think that's more fair, because, that journey that we've all gone through, and I could kind of talk about at length, was one of the things I got a little whiny about it, to be perfectly honest. I'm like, okay, it's so difficult to break in here because it moves so fast internal to AWS, and I understand their point of view. The sales teams is like, I don't have time to create a new relationship with a new partner. I just have to find a partner that does it well and continues to do it, and I'm just going to stay with them the whole time. Well, that just completely eliminates a lot of opportunity for the ones that are really trying to excel.
Yeah,
Well-
I'll ask you a question too, Barlos. I was going to say, you've been doing a lot more consulting with partners who aren't really in the flywheel, are just getting started. And so you're kind of interviewing them, but you're trying to help them once you understand where they are. So like, how have those conversations been? What are you starting to ask them so that you can help them kind of accelerate their journey?
I'll say that the SIs that are starting out and the ISVs that are starting out are on completely two different journeys with completely two different. It's always been like that, but it's even more so now because AWS is making a fundamental shift. And I don't know if you guys can feel it, but they've made this shift over the last year from being all about ISVs and forgetting all about SIs to being now more all about SIs and making ISVs be like, look, if you want to get somewhere with us, you've got to get with our SI. So it's kind of like that Spice Girls song. If you want to be my lover, you got to get with my friends. Well, it's which sounds weird to begin with, but the SIs are where it's at and how you build up a lot of your momentum with the AWS and the CPPO program. Even though it's still not perfect, it still needs to be fixed, I think, a little bit. It has the potential to work. And as we were talking with Jen Letourneau just this week during our fireside chat, she was telling us that there might be something in the future when it comes to multiple partners coming together to do a bundled ISV service, which Dan, is someone to talk to about that as well. So I think that there's a lot of stuff that's coming up, and the CEOs are very confused as to what they should and shouldn't do. And the first conversation that people are doing is they'll pick up the phone and they talk to an account manager, and the account manager is asking them, about the specific program that no one's supposed to know about, and say, hey, are you part of this? If not, I'm going to send this thing somewhere else. So it's getting even more confusing with all of the mud in the water with the verticals and what should we do? What shouldn't we do? Is commercial a part of it? Is it all just enterprise? So what Brett was saying, all of these changes are going crazy. And on top of that, a lot of the PDMs have been given more partners to deal with and have not been given more of a head count. So it makes it that much more of a work is coming out. And that's why, we exist, right? That's why we have these conversations. It's not because Amazon can't do its job. It's just such a big beast that when it makes changes, it's really hard for all of the smaller partners or ones that are sub 500 million to really be able to sink their teeth into that and get to that next level.
Yeah, and you make a pretty good point also about, the market, the CEOs being kind of confused and they don't really know which way to turn. And I think that we're just at a stage now, we've probably been there for quite some time, to be perfectly honest, that in a situation of confusion, they're going to fail closed. So if they get confused, they're just going to shut it down, because they know if they pick a wrong choice, that could be hundreds or hundreds with an S, thousands of dollars of mistake or millions of dollars of mistake, and it didn't solve a problem. So, I mean, if we start confusing the market will shut, so, I mean, that's a cautionary tale there, I guess.
So I'll transition this. Dan, thank you for being on the show. You've been a long-time listener, first-time presenter, but also you're one of the earlies to Caddyshack, and I think this is a new role for you. So, do a quick intro, your background, StratusGrid, and then I think there's a lot to be learned. Like, I'm not trying to recruit people to Caddyshack, but you're a pretty good example of like what you learned from the community and how it's helped you just be better and how it's helped your company, grow. And I'll cap that with, I saw you a few weeks ago at one of the premier AWS events that very few partners get invited to. And that's a huge testament to you and the work that you've done, over there.
In your
Yeah, I
beard.
appreciate and the beard. It's all about that. And Michael, thank you very much for that intro. Barlis, Brett, thank you so much for having me here today. It's always a pleasure. And so, yeah, just a little bit about me specifically is I'm 30 years in IT at this point, a little over. Started in 1993 when I joined the Air Force. It was kind of funny. I joined to
Thank you for your
become,
service, by the way.
thank you. And I joined to become an aircraft structural mechanic, but at the time I'm still colorblind, but at the time they had added corrosion to the curriculum, so was disqualified. But my scores let me do anything. But you'd hear the accent. I came from rural Mississippi in the 90s. I'm like, well, I've heard of computers. I might as well try that. And here I am 30 years later, So just kind of kept doing it. And I did that for 20 years. And so when I kind of got out in 2013, I know IT and I know it from a generational point of view. So I've actually seen it and I can talk on that quite a bit. And because it's the ebb and flow of technology doesn't change. We're not dealing with the first cloud in this industry, so I mean, it spans so much. And I found that backward looking glass has been real beneficial to me in this role and the way I'm able to understand some challenges in a lot of these customers, because we really face a lot of these industries that are trailing, that haven't adopted this cloud first or CADy. And I'm still running into technology that I'm quite familiar with. So, I mean, being able to bridge that gap has been quite valuable. And also I could talk human. So that's kind of where I come into the alliance side, and my journey as far as StratusGrid is concerned is StratusGrid was founded in 2013. The original founders saw the writing on the wall, saw the power of AWS and what it was going to do. And so he kind of started this and then got that partnership going. And then in early 2020, it changed over leadership. And the new CEO, who was a longtime friend of mine, said, Dan, I need you to come over and take over this AWS partnership. And at the time, I couldn't even spell AWS. I'm like, okay, what's that? So I'm like, let me come in here and try to figure out what this partnership means. And we were a very unhealthy select tier partner. I mean, we were 6 weeks away from having our renewal come up, and we didn't have any of our requirements met. And that's when I came on board, and so I just had to kind of just jump right in and try to figure out what Alliance was. And Barlis is the one that told me the difference between Alliance and Channel. So it's just like, oh, okay, And so coming from a unhealthy select tier partner in early 2020, we found out last week that we actually got our premier tier. So that was a huge, thank you so much. That was a huge
Congratulations.
moment. I appreciate that. And this might be that moment where I didn't know what I was asking for, but like I tell a lot of people, I'm an old school video game guy. I'm a completionist. I have to open up every treasure chest on the map. So if I see a thing in front of me, I got to go get it, And so that's got a premier tier for me. And so we got it. But as far as the company itself, we are SI that are transitioning over into a products company. So I have a pretty unique visibility into a lot of these conversations. So, we're now having to figure out pricing models for software, things I've never even considered in the past, so it's things like that. And that's where my Caddyshack relationship has just been so pivotal. So when I met through Ryan and then Barlis and Brett and Michael, it was really one of those moments of, thank goodness I finally found someone I could ask my stupid questions to and not be judged, and so I understood.
Oh, we judged you.
That's okay, but at least you do it behind my back. That's the best thing to do there. But it's like one of those moments of like, I have a group that when I speak with the people at AWS, and I'll preface this with, I'm just continuously and always impressed with the quality of people that they have at all levels. And they are still human. They do have a lot of challenges that are hard for them to overcome, but they're very good. But their loyalty is to AWS. And so when I have questions, and not necessarily even questioning that loyalty or asking for anything duplicitous in any way, they're going to give me the company answer. And sometimes I don't need the company answer. I need a partner answer. and that is, they can't give that to me,
So what to
they
do,
might not know it. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
What they'll tell you what to do, but not how to do it, right? That's
exactly.
a big change between that the way their position is and how we're positioned. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not their fault.
100%.
They don't know. I
They
mean,
don't
unless
know.
you've done it, it's really, and you've done it well, you couldn't know that. And
Well,
the
I can
inputs
tell
are
you
all
that when
different.
I was at AWS, I left AWS, I didn't know how to input anything into ACE. I opened ACE for the first time the day after I left AWS. I mean, I could get into my portion of ACE, which none of the partners see, but the portion of like what Cloud Alliance directors see and how to input a new opportunity and where all the buttons are. Like as someone who leaves AWS, you're like, oh, I'm an AWS expert. Yeah, you're an AWS expert internally in
In
AWS.
AWS.
But like
Right.
Brett knew a billion times more than I did about the outside partner journey than I did when I left AWS. It's just a different animal. And that's why I always say when you hire people from AWS, you gotta wait like the 9 month transition from the time that they feel like they're AWS gods until they realize that they don't really know anything outside of AWS.
That's
Bartless,
so funny.
Brett and I still joke that you have no idea how to use ACE, right? Like that's the running joke.
That's actually that's what I
I
was going
mean,
to say
I
too.
do know how to use ACE, but not as good as you two.
But it's funny. I've just never like kind of over rotated on that. But you know how it's such an interesting transition for our friends that were, ISMs that are rolling out and they're going to go do this easy alliance job on the outside. And they realize how fucking hard it is to be a partner on the outside. And then I realized that Bartless was the first one.
Yeah.
We're the first ISM to come out that didn't know what he was doing. I'm just kidding. No,
And I
no.
mean, there's an analogy I like to use a lot of times, and this is an old baseball guy. His name is Hank Aaron. Is very legendary and one of the most prolific home run hitters in history. But he was terrible. I mean, he retired and started becoming a batting coach, and he couldn't do it. I mean, it was impossible for him to teach people how to hit it. He was just like,
Yeah.
okay, you just walk up there and you hit the ball, boom, and then get up there like, no, you're doing it wrong. Here, let me show you. No, you throw a pitch, wham, they'll just do it just like that. So I mean, if you're in a situation where you just don't know, how could you be possibly understand how to teach it?
Right.
So I mean, that's kind of where going back to that question is like their heart's in the right place. They really want to be helpful, and they are
Yeah.
in their
So
roles. But there's times where I need more.
So we skimmed over it real quick. Like, what does StratusGrid do? You obviously have figured out kind of the superpower, how you guys fit into the ecosystem. Well, Brett likes to use divisional placement, but it's just like where are you going to go chase after? I'd like to say you can't be everything to everyone. Like, focus is important. Like, what do you guys do? What have you kind of cracked the code on when you got started? And then what are you doing now?
So big part right now is moving into that product company. So we have a product right now that is heavily focused on cost optimization and visibility in the PE world, and there's some unique challenges there from a PE to a portfolio company view. So especially if you're the parent or organization, you want to have better visibility into all of the portcos and how do you actually see what their capabilities are, where their spend is, and how they compare against their other brothers and sister organizations under that umbrella. That doesn't exist right now. So they actually got brought to us. It was like, hey, you need to take a look at this. And so what we found is as we started building that out, I mean, the idea was we need to be able to have operations and finance speak with each other. So we literally brought our CFO, who had a history in the PE world, kind of brought him in as part of design. So actually, they were able to show spend at a ledger style view so that they actually have a better visibility. So now this brings operations and finance together to speak the same language, because I mean that again, traditionally, that's not a real thing. So being able to show and demonstrate that at a very granular level is really, really nice. And we're getting great positive feedback from that. And again, we're also leaning into our services background because we're a long time SI. So we've actually dropped a lot of that into giving t-shirt sizes around how to very quickly start, cutting and making savings. So it's like, okay, if you have an unattached DBS, that's a real easy, that's a low hanging fruit. It's like, he's like, let me just highlight that for you. That's a low effort, high save opportunity there, and we actually put it out in a visual quadrant like that. So it's like, hey, here's some things to go focus on from our findings. This is low effort, high save. Or you've got these other things, like if we want to migrate you to a Graviton instance, something like that, it will save you a lot of money over time. But you're looking at a re-architecture here. There's going to be an investment of services and time that'll be necessary. All of that's baked into this solution, and we've done that in a way where it's also incredibly easy to install and start using immediately. So I mean, we're saying less than an hour, and it's actually less than 30 minutes.
So you guys categorized as an ISV or an SI in AWS's world?
We're SI right now. We're moving toward ISV.
Yep.
So we're kind of bridging both worlds. We have to keep the lights on, so we're still doing the SI stuff. And on the SI side, we do.
Yeah, there's benefits to both.
I like that you guys are going on that journey. That's an interesting place to go for sure. Converting, it doesn't happen a lot historically, but it's like actually one of the things I really got a lot of respect for Barless for figuring some of those things out. Like when we were working with one of our clients, last year, and quickly realized that like you guys are not a consulting partner. You have your own IP. You're really an ISV, and here's all the different benefits that you get by going this direction to it. So even Barless in the consulting engagement with these guys actually help give them that direction. That's awesome for you guys, especially if you can play both parts, right?
That's
Why
right.
not? String both fiddles, right?
And that's what we're finding, and that's the delicate balance. I mean, we've got a couple of big key verticals for us that are completely different sides of the world. We're in media and entertainment quite heavily. We've been a long time partner with Crunchyroll. So it's kind of funny when my kids start watching Attack on Titan. I'm like, yeah, we're the ones that help launch that, stuff like that. And so we've done that for many, many years. We started off that journey with about 40 hours divided between two engineers in a day. I think we've got close to 20 embedded engineers at all layers of their infrastructure. So, I mean, we've been there for a long time and we love that team over there. And we also have focused really heavily on supply chain and logistics. And actually, we are one of the supply chain and logistics competency launch partners. So we recognize that early, that is a trailing industry. Like I said earlier in the podcast, it's like there are several industries out there that are still late adopters, supply chain logistics, construction, manufacturing, all of them. They're just late adopters. And so we kind of saw that like that's an area that's ripe, for getting in there doing some work.
And I'll tie that back to what we were talking about earlier. Those are now verticals. Last year they were littered across enterprise.
Correct.
So if you're trying to build relationships, build content, build pipeline, much easier now that there's like a media and entertainment, there's a like real estate and construction, there's like much easier, right? That
much
segment,
easier.
Yeah. So like I think in many ways, like people are kind of, it's not scare, but yeah, things change. Most people don't handle change, but even to your business, do you now see the forest through the trees? Has that been easier for you to target stuff than maybe last year?
It brings up a great deal much more comfort and without being melodramatic, a little bit more hope, because it's like, okay, now I've got a group here that's dedicated. Yeah, hope, because again, even like I was saying earlier, that was one of those points of how do you do this? I mean, because especially in the engaged world, I mean, there are the ones out there that are just established and they're not moving, and it's like, so you have to find a different trick. Well, now, a lot of these verticals got shook up, and a lot of times it's people that I already knew that have landed in a different vertical. It's just like, okay, so they know me, they like the work that we do because we're pretty passionate about it. It's like, okay, well, hey, I'm in this brand new vertical that I don't know anything about, but StratusGrid does. Let me go grab those guys. I need to talk to Dad anyway because I need to figure out what beer product he uses. But we'll talk about this as well. So we're seeing a lot of that.
I'll pull that too. You actually hit on something that I think people aren't catching right now. If you've been selling to PE and media and entertainment, and now you've got a AWS rep or SAs that are now snapped into some new vertical that they don't, think about how you actually add value teaching them a little bit about the industry they're now supporting.
100%. This is something I preach about all the time. It comes from my years in the military, especially in the Air Force. It's really about mentoring. These are still young professionals. They are still You know, a lot of times they don't have a clue and they're afraid to say so. You know, so they need people that are willing to take the time to, you know, help them out however they want to. It's something that I do with every single person I have a consistent interaction with on the AWS side. I'm like, tell me how I can help you. You know, so if you tell me your KPIs, and I'm going to lean directly into them because I have a feeling this, I feel deeply about this, about if I could build that personal loyalty by, you know, literally feeding into their career, they're going to want to keep me for everything. You know, and you never know. And Michael, I think you and I talked about this in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, is you never know who this little OSR in startups 3 years from now might actually be running a full vertical. You know, you just
Yeah.
don't know. So it's like you
Yeah.
foster these relationships and
Yeah.
keep them forever.
We've talked about the 5 C's or 6 or 7. I mean, like the 1 is for champions, and champions equals like professional friendships. And you just explained how this works. People help people that they like, trust, they choose to spend their time with them. Like all partnerships are this way. We're talking about an AWS partnership, but it could have been a partnership with anyone. And I will call out number 1, because I'm the only one in this Caddyshack group that actually has this beautiful thing.
No, I was going to make that comment too.
Uh, uh,
They're
So
all
But
unique though, so all of them are different. So
this
that's the
is
one.
unique.
Dan, I wanted to thank you for that. So a couple things. First off, I thought you were Greenpeace. I didn't realize you were in the military. Kidding. Number 2, and I'm still in this regardless. Is it true that you've grown your beard out only since you've been in Caddyshack? Is this all brand new?
Yes,
And then,
actually, it just spontaneously grew at least 10 inches as soon as I met Ryan Norton. You know, I think it's a self-defense growth, you know, where it just went whoosh, you know, because it has to, you know.
Most of us grow about that much when we meet Ryan Norton. We just love him, you know. So
He's great.
And then,
but I was going to say, like, at least the Penn side, honestly, like you're talking about those connections and the people that you're empathetic to, trying to help. I mean, you nearly brought me to tears a few weeks ago. I was like super,
Well, I got to tell you, I have a pen as well. So
okay, so then we're all equal. But
yeah.
I think the point is like, be different, be, you know, be special, and you're treating people the way that you want to be treated, but it's also allowing you to foster relationships. And these folks now, they want to help you, right? They want to, you know, you don't have to have all the answers, but they're more open to helping you. So I think in many ways, like you've done something really great, whether you picked it up from your background, whether you're learning stuff from peers like us that have kind of given you some early guidance. I think that's, you know, as we round out the show, I think that's really important topics to just like how has either Caddyshack helped you? How have we helped you? How have you kind of started to put your own like recipe on this stuff as well? I think that's important for the audience.
you
Yeah,
know,
and
I was going to add one note to that too. You know, my sentiments around that for sure. Like I love like where you guys were going down that, because it's so true right now. Like just like I did with the last couple of companies, and even the intent platform that we put forward, like Michael's adopting a very similar motion there with with Lacework, what they're doing. They need that more than ever. Like you said, they don't even know what their verticals mean, much less any of this other craziness that's going on out there, right? So they need our help in understanding, giving them like a crystal ball into their accounts and how we can leverage those things together. So that's an unbelievable opportunity for all partners out there, right? All of you partners out there in the Caddyshack ecosystem, it is your opportunity to lean in to be a next generation partner, not just every other partner that shows up and throws up. How are you going to make their lives a little easier? That is what really makes you stand out of the crowd when it comes to Amazonians, right? Definitely big part of my mantra. And last note, and then back to Dan. Dan, thank you for the pin. For me, it was an important motion. I always wanted to have a really cool pin like that. So when you go sign like big deals and all that kind of stuff. So me and the wife both signed our HELOC and our remodel last week with your pin. So thank you very much for that.
Did you really? That's awesome. That makes me feel so good. And it was almost one of those moments of I didn't know if this was a good idea. I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not a sales guy. I really like people. I really connect well with them. And Chris is our CEO. We're going to present to the team of the private equity team. This was 2 years ago with the framework around our product. And I'm like, I don't want to just bring regular branded stuff to this really big group of people. You know, I'm like, Well, I've always made these pens. I can make a handful of these and bring them to see if they're a success. And they were huge, and they've stayed that way. And I mean, we walked out there, and Chris is like, "You're going to be making a lot of pens." I'm like, I figured that out too, you know. So I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the reaction. It makes me feel really good. And that's really, you know, my catharsis has always been to do that anyway. So this just kind of brings out that
Now, if you
full
could just make
circle.
me a knife, that'd be great.
That's really on the thing. I like taking old knives and put better handles on it. You know,
That's what
that's
I'm talking about right there.
yeah. So rejuvenate that old stuff. So yeah.
So, well, just back to the subject, like what, what have you found from the community that's kind of helped you do your job better? I think that's, and also I think you mentioned something really important, like there's no dumb questions that I've ever seen because everyone was
Right.
at a different 4 years ago. The answers I know today is because I didn't know them 4 years ago. No big deal, right?
See, a lot of times what I find, just to directly answer that, is the community is the goal. The community is what is just the best part of all of this. And I'm in the middle right now of working, as an example. I'm building out a solution. Y'all kind of touched on this earlier in the podcast, and we'll bring it full circle back around this. And I'm going to be working with a couple of Caddyshack people, and I'm building a solution around that. So, I mean, we're looking at having a thing that we're going to put on Marketplace. And at a minimum, it's going to be 3 of us, and there's a possibility there's going to be 4 of us. You know, in one solution, the idea is like I've already had my marketing people that's done discovery calls with 2 of them. We're going to grab all the data, and we're going to do a full, everybody gets equal space on the page, and the idea being like, okay, now let's all take this and put this on our individual company's marketplace offer, and then start handing it out to the salespeople. You know, so that's where my question around V&V comes in. It's like, hey, we really need to be able to understand how to also now feed this into the AWS sales pipeline, because there's a lot of power here, you know. And if you're now able to bring all these people that know so much, and there's not a lot of competition. There's so little ego that I've seen, other than just regular ego, but around the partnership and the alliance piece, it's been really open. And I think that really leads pretty heavily to the founders. So, I mean, you guys have done such a great job of setting that stage early and often, and it really shows through the entire Caddyshack organization. So well done, all of y'all.
Yeah, you can't put no ego and Barless in the same sentence, but
You saw how I qualified that, right? I was careful how I worded that.
Yeah, but the root is kind of for helping, right? In the enablement.
Yeah,
And I think we all found each other in the same way, which is like there's not much content out there on how to do this job or be successful, or how to set the right expectations. There's not a lot of how. There's a bunch of what and maybe some why, but there's not a lot of how. And so I think together we all are stronger by sharing our own experiences or tactics. And so I think the bundle idea is great. You can tell that the bundles concept is moving forward at AWS Marketplace maybe in the future. But yeah, I actually had this conversation today. Like Brett and I are in security, and a lot of security is compliance, and there's a bunch of new compliance frameworks in the US through SEC and NIST and DORA in EMEA. But if you do business, that you have to deal with all these regulations. And so I was trying to explain to our marketing team this same concept, which is like it's a people, process, technology, and then we solve like 30% of that. But like you're going to need an SI or someone else. Like it's to solve this problem for a company, there's a lot more than just a product that we sell. And so when you go to market, you have to explain to people kind of like, hey, there's the problem, but like there's a recipe to kind of get to that outcome, and there's multiple ingredients. And so I think you're seeing a lot of that, and it's pretty neat that you've thought through that with like what you guys do in this ecosystem. And it helps that they're all Caddyshack and we'll figure it out. But I think in many ways, just that concept works really well for the customer and working back from their needs.
Yeah, and you brought up a couple of good points that I'd like to kind of touch on as well. As when you're talking about how difficult it can be doing the alliance and doing the partnership people, I think that's proof positive with the Boneyard. I think that we've actually the number that I think that they unofficially say about the number of AWS partners is something like 135,000 worldwide. But I bet you we're not even looking at 10,000 that are active. So that means there's been 125,000 ish that have just kind of gone away. So I mean that's the boneyard, because they just don't have enough data to make this worthwhile. It's just too much. It's just too hard. So that again just really shows why there's a need for an organization like Caddyshack. And for all of AWS's fantastic qualities, they don't do a good job in the lower levels. I mean, it's a crucible down there, and it's just and a lot. I don't know if that's intentional to make sure that the best bubble up. I don't know, but it's rough. There's no question.
That's a good point, right? Like in your infancy as an emerging partner, you're both infants. Your PDR is an infant, and you're an infant. You both don't know a ton of stuff, and you're trying to figure it out. And now with the way that they're working, it's for the more mature partner, I think it's fantastic, right? It is painful. This year is going to have a terrible start. It's blew a quarter out of the water for no reason. Not for no reason, but it is painful. It's going to impact the whole year, and then other partners are going to get more bias because of that. So those leaned in partners, the SRP partners, those big premier partners, right? They're going to get more love than usual. And then the emerging partners, it sucks. It's going to be really, really tough, which is great for Caddyshack because they just need that much more help on how to get started. Like, why should I look at certain things? What are some of the benefits? What are some real stories of how you did this through, AWS Marketplace? How did you win like that? Those are the things that get me excited. But they're also the experiences that they don't know how to get there. They don't know how they got there in the first place. So that goes back to the, AWS is what, we are how, for sure. So thanks for the call out for Caddyshack too. Because it's been, even as much as of experience that I've had, it's so humbling to learn so much every single day, every single freaking day for the last, 2.5, 3, whatever years. It's I learned something more about SIs that I didn't know before, and I feel like I got a lot of data up here, but it's still like there's so much to learn, and definitely can't do it without it. I think it was might have been doing I think I did the awesome partners or the Caddyshack AWS Toronto Summit where they had me actually run a board, right? And that was really fun. But it was just I've heard the same comments every day, or over the years since we started this thing, that it was like I was a sales guy, and then they said, "But you're a alliance guy." I'm like, okay, well, how do I figure this out? They're like, "Oh no, that's your responsibility now." And it was this comment of like, we're just a whole bunch of lone wolves running around, and we finally got a little pack together here. It's making us much more powerful.
So I think we're kind of right at the time where we're, kind of moving things off. And Dan, we like to ask our guests a couple things. Like if you had to take kind of your experience, doing the alliances, all the partnership stuff, like what are maybe 2 or 3 of like lessons learned or best practices?
Lessons learned. Get processes in early for your ACE pipeline. You need to be able to recognize multiple different projects, opportunities, and you have to bake that into your operational process early, especially and specifically if you're trying to climb the tiers, especially on the SI side. You really have to stay focused on some very key specifics, and one of them is the customer satisfaction surveys. I know that sounds strange, but it's consistently the hardest metric to hit. So again, that's something that you need to focus time on early and get that into your conversations with your customers. I mean, that needs to be operationalized very, very quickly. And then if you can do that in the early stages and the lower levels, it will take care of itself on down the line. If you watch the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves, is the old saying. So you establish those processes early and really lean into them and make sure that they're operationalized. And the same thing with the opportunities. So what you got to be very careful of is engineers are wonderful. They don't necessarily like documentation, and that is from 30 years of experience, and I was one of them. So it's like you've got to make it, you have to check it, and it has to be consistent every single time. So.
Yeah. What else you got?
What else do I have? I've got a new recipe for cinnamon rolls. We want to talk about that.
I bet the house smells wonderful.
It does smell wonderful, and I'm thinking about adding espresso powder into my next batch for the filling. I think that is going to be next level.
Nice. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Hey, wanted to thank you again for coming on. This is kind of how this show works, because everyone is kind of taking the basic concepts, but you're applying it in a very different, unique way, and the give and the get. So I want to thank you for your time, all your input. I'll let you.
One last question. One
Yeah,
last
well,
question.
I'll let you. Yeah.
Who would you nominate as the next guest? Because I think that's something I would like to do, is kind of like a nomination challenge of
Love
who
it.
we should get next.
I like where your head's at.
And remember, it has to be a Caddyshack member, not an AWS person, because this is right now is just for Caddyshack. The fireside chats are for AWS.
I am a big fan of Jesus. If he hasn't been
He
on
already
this
did
yet,
one.
he did one.
He did
Well,
one this year. Yeah.
Yep. Well, everybody else is already on this one. There's somebody I think would be absolutely fantastic. He would give a great deal of
Don't
perspective,
say
because
Brian Norton.
I'm not going to say Ryan Norton. So you just,
Okay.
yeah, I'd love Ryan, but Lee Smith, I don't think is a Caddyshack member yet, but he's a former AWS PDM, and he was my PDM, and now he is out in the real world, and I need to get him into Caddyshack, and I think he would be a fantastic podcast member, and he's in Austin, Texas. So let's make
Sweet.
that happen, and that's my
All right.
nomination.
You got it. Fantastic, guys.
All right. Well, thank you again. I think this was fun, kind of wraps things up. So this was episode 14 or 114 if you're labeling it out. And thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace out.